FBI files include many unsolved mysteries and cold cases. While many FBI cold cases are still being solved even to this day, there are some crimes that remain a mystery and can leave some people looking red-faced, as they're sometimes the FBI's biggest mistakes and failures. Number 5. Some of the biggest FBI files that remain unsolved mysteries are art heists, and the heist at the Harry S. Truman Presidential Library and Museum in Independence, Missouri is one of the most embarrassing. It took less than a minute for the group of thieves to take what was then $1 million worth of precious artifacts in 1978. More than 40 years later, neither the thieves or the objects have been found. What makes this case so embarrassing is just how little effort was needed to take the artifacts. Presidential libraries don't tend to be the target for major heists, but this one in particular had some incredibly valuable artifacts. A collection of ceremonial swords and daggers were on display behind glass in the museum's lobby. 2 of the swords were gifts from the royal family of Saudi Arabia. The most impressive of these pieces was a curved steel blade with an ivory handle covered in diamonds and rubies, and it was a gift after an American medical team helped King Ibn Saud with his osteoarthritis in 1950. 2 other items were gifts from the Shah of Iran. All the hilts were encrusted with gems that could be worth $200,000 alone, and the scabbards were made from gold. At around 6:30 a.m. on March 24, 1978, 2 men smashed through one of the windows at the front of the building and went a few paces to the display case. There was only one guard on duty at the time, and he was located at the opposite end of the building. Outside, there was a woman acting suspiciously, and the guard was keeping an eye on her, as it was possible she was up to something. It's possible that she was just a coincidence, or more like a decoy to give the burglars the time they needed. When the guard heard smashing glass and the alarm went off, he went to the lobby, but the door had been chained from the other side. It didn't take long for him to get through, but by that time, the thieves had already gone. It took 45 seconds total for them to make off with the 3 swords and 2 daggers. They left behind shattered glass, but no fingerprints, and nothing for FBI detectives to go on. After the theft, there was little word in criminal circles about the items, leading investigators to believe that the thieves had been hired by a collector of some kind, and weren't looking to fence the items themselves. A more depressing alternative is that the items were melted down and the gems sold individually, in which case it's unlikely any of them will ever be recovered. The FBI still has a reward offered for information leading to the items being found, but so far it remains an unsolved mystery. Number 4. The FBI files on Benjamin Bugsy Seagull comes to hundreds of pages of official documents and handwritten notes. There's enough there alone to create a book on the famous mobster, but it wouldn't be one with a satisfactory ending, because the ending of Seagull's life is an unsolved mystery and not a case the FBI has been able to bring to a close. Seagull's criminal career started young. While still a teenager, he was part of a gang involved in illegal gambling and car thefts. As he got older, his crimes grew more serious. The money involved rose exponentially, and he got more and more power. He was known primarily as a hitman, but also got involved in bootlegging during the Prohibition and gambling when the Prohibition ended. He was one of the driving forces in the development of the Las Vegas Strip, and the casino and hotel that he operated is still there today. Seagull worked in circles with high-ranking members of various mafia groups, which often got him in trouble with both his peers and law enforcement. At one point, he was arrested and tried for taking the life of another mobster, but was acquitted at the trial. Seagull was one of the first celebrity mobsters, but what really secured his position in folklore was the mystery surrounding his passing. It was June of 1947, who was at his girlfriend's home in Beverly Hills, sat on the sofa reading a newspaper. 9 bullets were fired through a window. 4 hit Seagull, and he passed away at the scene. It was a gruesome sight, and investigators from local law enforcement and the FBI were left with the mystery. There were plenty of reasons the mob might have wanted to take out Seagull. He had put a lot of money into opening the Fabulous Flamingo, his hotel and casino in Las Vegas. That money came from mob leaders who had invested in the project. The project had overrun its budget, and some suspect Seagull was skimming some of the money for himself. In the end, the casino would be more than worth the investment, as it made millions of dollars in the first 6 months of operation. But the concern Seagull might have been messing around with their money may have been too much for some. One reason why there are some doubts to this theory is that it didn't take the form of a natural mob hit. Typically, it was preferred to take out a target when there was little chance of missing, like the back of a car. Attacking from outside of a building through a window left lots of room for error, which was evidenced by the fact that most of the bullets missed Seagull. Either way, this was a very unusual mob hit, or it wasn't done by someone inside the mob. Alternatively, some have suggested that the brother of Virginia Hall, Seagull's girlfriend at the time, may have been involved. Virginia was in Europe at the time of the attack after the two got into an argument. It was known that Seagull would beat Virginia and left her with bruises, which naturally angered her brother, who was in the military. Witnesses heard him and Virginia arguing about this 6 months before the attack, and he said he would take Seagull's life. Whether or not this is a serious threat or just part of the mystery is unknown. Nobody was ever arrested for taking Seagull's life, and the attack remains one of the biggest mob mysteries and one of the FBI's unsolved case files. Number 3. One of the biggest failures of the FBI happened within its own offices, a crime that wouldn't be solved until long after the statute of limitations expired, and the people responsible came forward. It was 1971. For years, students and political activists had been campaigning against the war in Vietnam. The civil rights groups had been struggling for power. All the time, the FBI was focusing on these groups of what they saw as dissidents. Director J. Edgar Hoover wanted to sow paranoia into these organizations to stop them from attracting new members and cause them to turn on one another. Some of the people in these circles had begun to suspect illegal spying operations by FBI agents. They had come to the conclusion that no amount of marches, protests, or even sit-ins were going to make a difference, and they wanted to bring the FBI's crimes to light. So on March 8th, while most of the country was focusing on the boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, 8 people broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and made off with all of the documents inside. The group was led by Bill Davidson, a Haverford College physics professor who had campaigned against nuclear weapons and the Vietnam War. The group was made up of people he trusted to keep their identities a secret, and who were dedicated to the cause. They decided against targeting the main office, instead choosing a satellite office located in an apartment building in Media. They staked out the office for months ahead of time, learning the routines of the residents and workers inside the building. One of the group took lockpicking classes to prepare. A few weeks before the planned break-in, Bonnie Rains, a member of the group, visited the office undercover. She claimed to be a college student researching opportunities for women within the FBI. Her short visit to the office allowed the group to confirm that there were no cameras or alarms that could trip them. On the day of the break-in, the group had to use a different door than they were expecting, as the lock proved to be too difficult to pick. Other than that, the plan went off without a hitch. They made off with every document and FBI file in the building without alerting anyone. After the break-in, the group searched through the documents, revealing the espionage against US citizens that included many left-wing activists and every black student at one university. The group called themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, and released documents to the press. It started a wide-scale investigation into the FBI and caused outrage with the general public. 200 agents were tasked with trying to find the culprits. Most activists in the area were harassed in the months afterward, but nobody had any idea who was behind it. Hoover, who was directly responsible for much of the espionage, was keen to catch the culprits, but he would pass away before the case was solved. The FBI file on the case was closed a few days after the statute of limitations ran out in 1976. One of the 8 members on the team were even in their long list of suspects at the time that the case was closed. Despite knowing they couldn't be charged, the group remained silent. It wasn't until 2014 that some of the group came forward to confirm their involvement and talk about what they did and why. While the case is no longer an unsolved mystery, it definitely remains one of the biggest failures of the FBI. Number 2. One of the biggest art thefts in history remains an FBI file that has never been solved. More than 30 years on from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft in 1990, the FBI has never been able to confirm who was behind the theft or where the works of art are located today. The crime began in an almost comical fashion. It was the night of St. Patrick's Day. 2 men posing as police officers walked up to a side door of the museum in Boston and requested entrance. They said they were responding to a disturbance caused by the St. Patrick's Day celebrations. They were allowed in, where they quickly subdued the 2 security guards, turned off the security cameras, and got to work. A total of 15 paintings as well as other works of art were stolen. The paintings were cut from their frames, which remain on display in the museum today as a reminder of what was lost. At one point, the thieves tried to steal a flag of Napoleon's Imperial Guard, but were unsuccessful and decided to go for a bronze eagle ornament instead. It took just 81 minutes to steal the artwork that would be worth $500 million. It took 2 trips, but the pieces were loaded into a car they had parked at the outside of the building. The guards were left in the museum basement with duct tape over their mouths. It wasn't until the morning, when the day shift guards arrived to find nobody inside, that the police were called and the night shift guards were located. In the years since, the FBI and the museum have offered millions of dollars in reward money for information about where the paintings are today and who was behind the theft, but both remain an unsolved mystery. The FBI has more recently listed a number of people they believe might have been involved, but almost all have since passed away and none were arrested. Decades after the crime, the FBI announced that they were fairly sure of the initial path the paintings had taken, through the Boston mob to Philadelphia. But beyond that, the trail goes cold. In the end, while the FBI is still committed to solving the case, it's likely much of the information is coming too late to definitively solve this mystery. Number 1. The case of Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia, is one of the most infamous unsolved cases in the FBI files. Elizabeth's body was found on a cold January morning in 1947 on a street in Los Angeles. The FBI, for its part, did its role to identify Elizabeth very quickly, but finding the person responsible for her passing has not been as easy. Elizabeth was an aspiring actress who had moved to LA in the summer of the previous year to try to get her big break. In that time, getting roles had proven harder than she had expected, and she was working as a waitress when she disappeared on January 9th, 1947. However, nobody realized she was missing until her body was found 6 days later by a woman walking her child to school. At first, the woman believed the body to be of a mannequin due to how pale it was and how it was posed, but soon realized a horrifying crime had taken place. Elizabeth's body had been split in 2 at the waist, and there was evidence that she had been tormented before her passing. However, there was no evidence this had taken place at the location where the body was found. Instead, she had been cleaned and moved there after her passing. Police sent the FBI scans of her fingerprints, and within an hour, the FBI was able to give Elizabeth her name back. She had previously applied for a role at a US Army base, giving her fingerprints there, and then again when she was arrested for underage drinking a few years earlier. But having the identity of the victim brought the authorities no closer to identifying who was behind this horrific crime. A few days after the crime made headlines around LA, a manila envelope addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner was discovered. Inside were the contents of Elizabeth's purse, including her birth certificate and phone book. Everything had been washed with gasoline. Police tried contacting everyone in the address book for answers, but every lead went cold. They eventually were able to identify the person who had last seen Elizabeth as Robert Manley, a married man that she had been dating who left her at a hotel. He was later questioned by police, but was absolved of any involvement in the crime. Many people have come forward to confess to the crime, but almost all have been proven false. Given this FBI file is now more than 70 years old, it seems unlikely the crime will ever be solved. It will remain a mystery. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.